He told Bathsheba, you go on home and pretend everything's wild. You mourn for a while, and then we'll get married and move on, business as usual. After the mourning time was over, she moved into his house and she became his wife. And David was fine. The man who claimed to be after God's own heart, he was fine. He lusted, coveted, committed adultery, and murder, and he was fine. Sometimes we do things that it just don't bother us. He was fine. Looking at our world a little bit today is Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, holiday, birthday thing going on. We look back to our nation. Our nation started out kind of like David. Some pilgrims. Y'all know the story of pilgrims. Looking for religious freedom. They sailed over here. Almost starved to death had it not been for the Native Americans who taught them what to eat and how to eat. Some settlements had come before and they'd all died off, but the pilgrims got help. What's his name? Squanto came and showed them how to plant corn, how to live in this new nation. My Lord. They went from there to being colonists of England, slaves of a sort themselves. They said, our nation, our people, we said, we don't want to be held by anybody. We wrote up the Declaration of Independence. Put stuff in it like the inalienable right that all men are created equal. Then later they ratified the Constitution after they won the Revolutionary War. By the way, they had Native Americans and Africans and everybody else fighting to help them win the war. Won the war. Wrote the Constitution. Constitution had great language and good stuff. Equality. Everybody, liberty, justice, rights, Bill of Rights, all this good. A great recipe, awesome meal. Had all the right ingredients in it, but the one thing, everybody didn't share in the meal. If you were a woman, you didn't share in the meal. If you were black, you didn't share in the meal. If you didn't come from a certain country or Europe, you didn't share in the meal. People were segregated, abused, marginalized. And just like David, we were fine. It was fine. You stay in this neighborhood, I stay in that neighborhood, and it was fine. As you look back at the text, David had lusted, coveted, committed adultery, murder, and he was fine. A man of God was fine. The man who wrote, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my light, my salvation, whom shall I fear? I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." The same man who was after God's own heart was fine. But then God sent Nathan by. But you got to be careful how you approach the king. So Nathan came in and said, "Oh, king, I have a story for you. I have a story to tell you." And he told him the story that there was a rich man with plenty of cattle and plenty of sheep, and he lived next door to a poor man who only had one female sheep. And the man who owned that one sheep, they loved the sheep. They treated the sheep like a pet. But when the rich man's friend showed up, he decided, "I'm going to barbecue the poor man's sheep." And he just took it, killed it, slaughtered, fed his friends, made merry, and he was fine. And when David heard it, it It's something about when you hear your own story. It didn't sound too bad when you were doing it, but when somebody began to tell you all that you did, how you did it, how you took that woman's husband, how you took that person's wife, how you beat somebody down, how you lied, stabbed, when you hear somebody telling a story, it always sounds worse when you don't think it's you. And Nathan came in and told, "O king," and after David got and said, "Who is this scoundrel?" Nathan said, "It's you, O king. You had all you needed and you killed Uriah the Hittite and took his wife for your own. Didn't I bless you to get out that shepherd field? Didn't I bless you to keep you safe when King Saul was trying to kill you? Didn't I keep you through battle? Haven't I always blessed you to be more than you could ever be on your own? If it had not been for me, David, how could you do a thing like this and just be fine?" In the 50s and 60s, United States, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he came the same way. He came to our nation. He said, "You have a great constitution. It's time for you to rise up and live out the true meaning of your creed. You're talking about equality and justice for everybody, but your own citizens are suffering." And he began to do protests. He began to do nonviolent protests, because what he did in a sense was like Nathan. He got down humble on his knees and he began to pray in front of the White House, and he began to pray in front of the Capitol building, and he began to sit at lunch counters, and they began to say, "God will give you what's due you." He became a prophet to the nation. He began to put things on television about injustice and see what the great nation who had everything, the great recipe, how they were forgetting people in their own country. Lord, change my heart. Back to the text. After David heard the story, his heart was broken. He began to realize how he had hurt God, and how he had just done these awful things in light of how God had been to him. And he sat down and he wrote Psalm 51. This is a psalm of repentance. It's a psalm of understanding, recognizing that God has blessed you and you have denied him, and you're doing what you want to do. You're not giving your best to God. You're doing your thing. Dave understood, I needed a heart change. But he knew he couldn't do it by himself. So he asked God, first of all, don't abandon me. I know I'm messed up, but don't abandon me. Then he went to the part saying, don't move your protection from me. But then he said, in order for me to do this, I need you to create in me a pure heart and a steadfast spirit. A steadfast spirit means that when everybody else is doing wrong, I'm still going to follow you. Even though it looks right, I'm still going to follow you. When everybody else is just turning their head to injustice and problems of the world and saying, it's okay if this group is marginalized. It's okay if we can open the door for some and slam their face in others. He said, oh, come on, somebody. And David understood that he couldn't do it on his own. It would take God to do such a thing. Create in me a clean heart, a pure heart, and a steadfast and a right spirit. Because he knew that once he got it right, he'd be able to help other folk get it right. But that was David. That was David.